What is going on? And welcome to episode 11 of the Fight Science Made Simple podcast. If you're new, welcome. I'm Coach Adam. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I'm a performance and recovery coach, and I'm also an active MMA fighter. With the Fight Science Made Simple podcast, I drop new episodes every single Monday to help fighters perform better, recover faster, build knockout power, championship cardio, and stay on the mat for life. I've been having a blast making these. We're 11 weeks in, and I'm super grateful. I also live stream every single episode on my Instagram, Fight Science Collective. So if you're listening to the podcast and you don't follow me on Instagram yet, you're going to want to get over there. We drop a ton of posts 2 times a day. My goal in 2026 is to put posts out 3 times a day. So there's a ton of value over there to help you level up your game, both on and off the mat. If you're new, again, welcome. If you're recurring, welcome back. Happy to have you here. The best thing that you can do to support the podcast, there are 2 things that you can do. The first thing is follow if you don't already. If you find the content super valuable, if it's very helpful, please give it a follow. The second thing is to share it. Share it with teammates, with training partners, with anybody that you think could benefit from what we're throwing down here. It would mean a lot for me. I'm on a mission to completely change combat sports and provide science-backed training and recovery and care, UFC Performance Institute level quality to combat athletes of all levels, from hobbyists to pros all around the world. And this podcast is one of my ways for doing it. So please share, spread the word. It means a lot. Really excited about today's episode. Today we are talking about all things A-Lactic system. This is going to be the final episode in a series of 3 episodes on energy system development. Your body produces energy. Everything that you do requires energy, from sitting here to walking to running to exercising to training to competing. And there are only 3 ways that your body uses and produces and creates energy for any kind of activity: the aerobic system, the lactic system, and the alactic system. Episode 8 was the aerobic system. This is if you need to go the distance. Episode 10 was the lactic system. This is when you're throwing hard exchanges, flurries of strikes, hard wrestling, when your arms start to build up. And today we're covering the final episode of energy system development, which is going to be the alactic system. This is your knockout power. This is finishing takedowns. This is passing the guard. This is anything that requires you to be explosive and fast and strong and powerful. That's what we're going to cover today. And this is really, really important for combat sports because you need to be powerful. You want your punches and your kicks and your strikes to do damage. You need to be able to finish takedowns. You need to be able to be explosive at a moment's call. If you're trying to escape from a bad position, you're trying to pass to a better position, you have to be explosive, and you have to make sure that being explosive doesn't gas you out. And honestly, the alactic system could be the difference between winning a fight and losing a fight. It could be getting dominated for the entire duration of a fight and then being able to pull a finish out of your back pocket because your power is there. So you really want to make sure that your alactic system is fully developed. And especially in a sport like MMA specifically, MMA is primarily an aerobic alactic sport. The main energy systems that you're going to use in MMA are aerobic and the alactic system. There's going to be some lactic involvement, but it's mostly going to be aerobic and alactic. So understanding the alactic system is going to be massively important to your success as a combat athlete and as a fighter. What we're going to cover, so we're going to talk a little bit about specifically how the alactic system works, and then we're going to talk about how to develop the alactic system, the 3 methods that you need to develop your alactic system, the best exercises and training protocols to follow, and when to improve the alactic system. We're also going to talk about nutrition and supplements as well. All right, so let's jump into it. The alactic system is, like I said, it's your body's energy system used for power. It's your most explosive system. It's your fastest energy system. It also gases out and depletes the quickest. The way the alactic system works is essentially your fast twitch muscle fibers will break down the stored ATP, adenosine triphosphate, available energy currency that's available in your body. It will break down the stored energy and then use something called phosphocreatine to regenerate that ATP. And once all of your stored energy has been depleted and all of your stored phosphocreatine has been depleted, then your fast twitch fibers can't contract as fast and as hard as they normally can. And this is where your power starts to fade. This is why power is such an explosive, fast dynamic movement because your body rapidly breaks down and regenerates energy, ATP, using the alactic system. But it's not producing new ATP. It's not generating ATP like your aerobic or your lactic system will. It's only relying on what you have stored and what you have available stored. And so the interesting thing is that your stored substrates, the stored energy, the stored ATP, the stored phosphocreatine is largely very genetic. It's determined mostly by your genetics. So it's very, very, very challenging to develop your alactic system, specifically the stored amount of energy and stored amount of phosphocreatine that you have. That being said, it is still possible to develop your alactic system, even if just by a marginal degree. And honestly, 10%, 15% increase in your alactic power could make a massive difference in your fight. So even if you're someone that's not naturally powerful as an athlete, you still have the ability to develop more power. You just have to know how to do it and do it the right way. And so let's keep going a little bit deeper in specifically how the A-Lactic system works. My brain just fired out for a second. How the A-Lactic system works. It's also called the phosphocreatine system. It's an anaerobic energy system, which means energy is broken down and then regenerated without oxygen. Out of the aerobic system and the lactic system and the alactic system is the least complex. There are the least amount of steps in it to supply your body with energy and to cause motion and activity to happen. And because it's so simple, it's very fast, it's very rapid, it's very explosive, but it also gasses out fairly quickly as well. And that's also why it's largely genetic, because there are less components that you can train to improve the system. The way it works is, so you have stored ATP in your body. And the way that it works, so like adenosine triphosphate. So you have the adenosine, which is like a head, and then you have 3 phosphates that make up like tails, okay? And the way I like to think about this, I was taught this by one of my professors back in college when I was in school for exercise science. It's like you have a school bus. We were all in school. You put 3 kids, I hope we were, most of us were. You have the school bus seats, right? And typically, you're only supposed to have 2 kids per seat. But every once in a while, you get 3 kids packed into a seat. And there's a lot of tension in there. One kid's annoying one kid, the other kid's picking on the other kid, and there's just all this pent-up energy and tension. This is like ATP, adenosine triphosphate. The 3 phosphate heads that are on that adenosine, if the bus seat is the adenosine, those 3 kids are the phosphates that are sitting in the seats. And they're sitting there, and there's all this tension, and there's all this energy, and then the bus driver yells at one of them, "Hey, move out of that seat!" And the kid gets up, goes into the other seat, and the other 2 kids, boom, they release. And that energy gets released and that tension calms down. And that's what happens when your body breaks down ATP. It removes one of the phosphate heads and energy gets released, and then you get to use that energy for something like throwing a knockout punch. And that ATP gets turned into something called ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So now there are only 2 phosphates on the adenosine. There are only 2 kids in the school bus. Your body has another substance available called phosphocreatine, which is basically creatine and a phosphate. And what phosphocreatine does is it gives up its phosphate and attaches it to ADP to create another ATP. And so when you're doing something like shooting for a takedown, or throwing a knockout punch, or throwing a powerful kick, your body is going to break down the available ATP that it has, turn it into ADP, and then it's going to use the available phosphocreatine that it has to donate another phosphate to the ADP, to regenerate it into ATP, and your body will just repeat that process until you're out of phosphocreatine. It'll break down the available ATP. It'll use phosphocreatine to regenerate that ADP into ATP again, and then it will just keep recycling the process until you're out of phosphocreatine. Once you're out of phosphocreatine, this is when you are no longer going to primarily use your alactic system for energy. This is where you're not able to throw with powerful shots anymore. This is where you're feeling slower. This is where you're probably going to shift into more of lactic conditioning and maybe even into the aerobic zone primarily. Okay. This is how the alactic system works. Okay. The alactic system uses your fast twitch muscle fibers to contract extremely quickly, to be recruited to produce a ton of force at a very, very fast rate of force development. And this is what's going to produce power. All right. So that's how the alactic system works. All right. This is really, really, really important to understand because there aren't a lot of steps in the process. And so when you understand how the alactic system works, then you can start to understand how to train the alactic system. And training the alactic system, there are really only 3 ways that you can train it. The first is by improving your alactic power, how quickly your body can break down ATP into ADP and then regenerate that ADP into ATP again. All right. We're going to touch on that in a little bit. The second way that you can improve your alactic system is by improving your alactic capacity. Now, alactic capacity is very, very, very genetically determined. It is very challenging, very difficult to improve your alactic capacity. It's possible, but it's very challenging to do. Alactic capacity is basically the available phosphocreatine that your body has and the available ATP that your body has. And so it's interesting because our fast twitch muscle fibers are what stores the available phosphocreatine, and muscle fiber amount is a very genetic thing. When you're born, you pretty much are determined the amount of fast twitch muscle fibers that you have compared to the amount of slow twitch muscle fibers that you have. That's why some people are natural sprinters and jumpers, and other people are natural marathon runners. Now, as a marathon runner, it's possible to become more explosive, but you're never going to be the best sprinter in the world. Having more power will help you in your marathon running, but you're not going to be Usain Bolt, right? It's just not going to happen. And that's because the amount of muscle fibers that you have is a very genetic thing. And so you're predetermined how many fast twitch muscle fibers you have, which means it's predetermined how much phosphocreatine is available in the body. And so it's really, really challenging to improve the alactic capacity because once you have depleted all of the phosphocreatine stores, then your alactic system isn't contributing the primary amount to your energy system production. And so we'll talk about how to improve your alactic capacity a little bit. Just know that it's very, very, very challenging to do. If you've never trained alactic capacity before, then it's worth doing to improve some of your alactic capacity, but it's probably going to be on the lower end of time investment when it comes to your conditioning and to your training. And then the third way that you can improve your alactic system is by improving your brain's ability to recruit your fast twitch muscle fibers, the neuromuscular adaptation, and that comes to your strength training, through your power training. We're going to talk about that as well. So your alactic system, super important for generating power. It's a very simple system. There aren't a lot of steps in the process. Because it's so simple, it's very explosive, it's very powerful, but it gasses out very quickly. It's a very genetically determined system because your alactic system is largely determined by the amount of fast twitch muscle fibers that you have. Okay. The muscle fibers are what store the phosphocreatine, and that's what's going to improve your alactic capacity. The 3 components to your alactic system: alactic power, alactic capacity, and then the neuromuscular adaptation, your brain's ability to recruit those muscles. Okay. Let's talk about alactic power. Okay, let's talk about how to improve your alactic power. If we understand that it's very, very challenging to improve the total available amount of substrates, things that contribute to the alactic system, then the number one way that you're going to improve the power that comes out of the alactic system is by improving the efficiency at which your body breaks down ATP. Oh, I was hitting the mic. The efficiency at which your body breaks down ATP and then uses phosphocreatine to regenerate ATP. So if your body can produce more or can break down ATP faster in a more efficient rate, then you're going to be able to get more power out of the system. Okay. And so the way that you're going to train your alactic power is through intervals. The best way that I would recommend doing this is with sprinting, top speed sprinting. The key here is you have to go fucking hard, 100%, all out, max power. You could probably use an assault bike. You could probably use some skill training in order to do this, like max effort kicks. But honestly, my favorite way, and I was taught this when I was interning at Temple University's Division I Olympic sports department, was that the best way to develop your conditioning, specifically your power, is through sprinting. So I would choose top speed sprinting. Now, the duration of these sprints is going to be anywhere from like 7 to 10 seconds. This is because the alactic system realistically isn't going to be used for more than 10 seconds. You're going to be super powerful for a very short amount of time, and then it's going to fade out. So you're going to want to sprint 7 to 10 seconds. And then from there, like after you do your sprint all out, balls to the wall, everything that you got, put as much power into your sprint. Then you're going to need to completely rest and recover after you sprint. So you're probably looking at 2 to 5 minutes between every single repetition of sprinting. And the reason for this is because we're improving how much power you can produce from the alactic system. You're improving the efficiency at which your body can break down ATP and regenerate, which means your body needs to fully recover and regenerate the phosphocreatine that's available, the ATP that's available from doing that work. So you do a max out sprint. You deplete all the ATP and the phosphocreatine that's available. Then you have to completely rest for 2 to 5 minutes so your body can replenish that phosphocreatine, and you can put max effort and max intent into the next rep. Okay. From there, like you're probably looking at anywhere from 5 to 8 reps per set. You're probably going to do another like 1 to 2 sets per workout. And then you're going to want to do this probably like 1 to 2 times, maybe 1 to 3 times a week in order to increase this system. Okay. So it's a max out sprint, everything you got, 100% effort, 7 to 10 seconds, again, gas it out. Then I need you to make sure that you rest completely, 2 to 5 minutes. Let the phosphocreatine stores replenish, full rest, and then repeat it, right? 5, 6 reps, 1 to 2 sets, 2 to 3 times a week. And this is how you're going to be able to improve the overall power and efficiency of your alactic system. And another thing I want to mention, a really important component to your alactic ability is your aerobic system, because your aerobic system is what allows your alactic system to recover. Okay. So if you have a weak ass aerobic system, the phosphocreatine isn't going to regenerate. You're not going to be able to recover. You're probably going to gas out. Just like the lactic system, there's going to be heat and metabolic waste and other byproducts that are available in the muscle. And so the aerobic system will clear all of that and replenish everything that's needed in order for the alactic system to perform at a high level. So if you have a poor aerobic system, if your resting heart rate is high, if you're gassing out going the distance, if you have a high heart rate recovery, go watch episode 8 of the podcast. Go listen to episode 8 of the podcast, and that's going to break down a full blueprint, a full guide on how to develop your aerobic system, because your aerobic system is super important for continuing to push out power with the alactic system. So that's how you're going to develop your alactic power. We're going to talk just briefly on developing your alactic capacity, because like I said, it's very, very difficult to make a meaningful change to your alactic capacity because it's genetically determined. You have the phosphocreatine that you have, right? We can improve how long your body can produce power just by conditioning and training, but it's not going to last for a very long time. So the way that I would do this, very similar to lactic power intervals, you need to select an exercise where you can go 100% all out max power, like an assault bike, like some skill training MMA drills, but I would prefer max effort sprinting. Okay. You're going to do a similar duration. You're probably going to go like 10 to 15 seconds on your sprint, maybe a little bit longer, so you can start to push the limits and how long you can produce power and be explosive for. And then you're going to need some incomplete rest. So instead of resting for 2 to 5 minutes of complete rest, you're going to only rest for like 20 to 90 seconds. The reason we're doing this is because you're increasing your power repeatability, your ability to produce power rep after rep after rep. With lactic power intervals, you're just focusing on the power aspect. So you need to completely rest so you can put 100% intent and effort into each rep. But on the alactic capacity side of things, we're trying to improve your repeatability. And so your rest needs to be a little bit shorter so you can work on going rep after rep after rep. I would keep it, you're going to do a little bit higher reps, probably like 10 to 12 reps, but same thing, 2 to 3 sets per workout and then 1 to 3 workouts per week. You're not going to do a lot of this. It's probably only going to be a phase, maybe 2. You're going to get some marginal improvement from this, but it's going to be minimal. So if you've never trained alactic capacity before, go ahead and train alactic capacity, but it's going to be largely a genetic thing. The other way that you can improve your alactic capacity is by supplementing with creatine. Honestly, everybody should be supplementing with creatine, but especially combat athletes and fighters should be supplementing with creatine. Typically, the rule of thumb is like a 20-gram loading phase for 2 weeks and then going to 5 grams a day. But there's a lot of research coming out that people could benefit from more than 5 grams of creatine, and creatine supplementation is actually pretty individualized. We could do a whole fucking podcast episode just on creatine because there's a lot of research coming out with your brain, the benefits just to overall health and brain protection. If we're talking strictly power output in alactic system, 5 grams will be fine. A lot of the new research is showing 0.1 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is really, really interesting. I just increased my creatine dosage this week to 10 grams of creatine instead of 5, so I doubled it. So I'm definitely excited to see if that plays any kind of improvements or changes to my overall brain health, because Lord knows I need it, and power output as well. So that's alactic capacity. We talked about alactic power. We talked about alactic capacity. Now, the final way to improve your alactic system is by improving neuromuscular recruitment, improving your brain's ability to produce force, and then rate of force development, how quickly it can produce that force. And this is going to come from your strength training. This is going to be developed in the weight room. When we're developing our alactic system in the weight room, it's very important that you understand something called the force velocity curve. Okay, so we have a curve, it looks like that. At the top of the curve, you have force. At the bottom of the curve, you have velocity. And in the middle of the curve, you have power. Okay? Force is exactly what it sounds like. It's the maximal amount of force that your body can produce. This is trained with max strength training. This is going to be your heavy lifting. This is going to be 3 to 5 sets of 1 to 3 reps. This is 85% of your 1 rep max or higher. We're not worried about speed here. We're worried about producing as much fucking force as you can. On the other end of the curve, we have velocity. This is speed. This is how quickly you can get from point A to point P. Top end sprinting, jumping as high and fast as you can, throwing light shit really, really far, right? Being able to move rapidly. In the middle of the curve, you have power. It's the cross section. This is the product of force and velocity. Force times velocity is power. This is going to be moving moderate weights as quickly and dynamically and explosively as possible. This is jumping with weights. This is ballistic movements with heavier med balls. This is your Olympic variations like cleans and snatches and jerks. And the thing is, every aspect of the force velocity curve needs to be trained. You need maximum strength and force output. You need strength speed. You need speed strength. You need power. You need velocity training. You need top speed training. You need all of it in order to not just improve how much force you can put out, how much fast twitch muscle recruitment your brain can control, and also how quickly you can get to point A from point B. You need all of it, right? Because think about it. You could have a really, really fast punch. You could be fast as shit. But if you can't put any force behind that strike, you're not going to have power. Okay? You're not going to be explosive. You're not going to be dynamic. You could be really, really strong. You'd be strong as fuck. Maxing out squat, maxing out deadlifts, insane bench press. But if you're slow, you're not going to have power. You need all of it. Okay? So this is really, really important. And honestly, like this is where most of your alactic development is going to go down. Alactic capacity is okay. Alactic power is good. But developing your power, your force production, your velocity, your top speed, your power output in the weight room, this is going to be the number one thing that's going to impact your finishing power and your ability to efficiently use the A-Lactic system. So at the Fight Science Collective with my clients, there are a couple different methods that we use. If we're talking about increasing force output and max strength, we're going to use something called the max effort method in order to do this. Just like we talked about, max effort method is your heavy compound lifts. You're going to choose your squat variations. You're going to choose your hinging variations like deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, hip thrusts. My brain farted again. Hip thrusts. You're going to choose your pressing variations, bench pressing, your pulling variations, your pull-ups, your barbell rows, things that you can load heavy. We're not worried about how quickly you're going to move here. We're just worried about the maximum amount of force that you can produce. So we're going to keep the reps lower, 1 to 3 reps. We're going to keep the intensity higher, the weight higher, 85% of your 1 rep max or more. And you're going to perform this from anywhere from 1 to 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 sets. Okay, volume is low, intensity is high. This is going to improve your brain's ability to recruit fast twitch muscle fibers. It's also going to improve how much maximal force you can put out. As we're working our way down the curve, we're going to have different qualities that we can train, like strength speed, where we're still using our heavy compound movements, but now we're starting to decrease the intensity, working in 80% of our 1 rep max and increasing how quickly we can move. Still low reps, 1 to 3 reps, but now we're thinking about moving faster, okay? We can use something like I have a gym where it attaches to the bar and it measures the velocity of the bar in order to do this. You can move into speed strength where now the intensity goes down even more. Maybe now we're talking about like 60% of our 1 rep max, but the rate of force development, the speed is going to go up. Then we have power. Okay, this is where we're going to perform, again, anywhere from probably 3 to 10 sets of 1 to 3 reps, but now the intensity is going to be lower. Now we're going to work probably anywhere from 30 to 40% of your 1 rep max. The key here is moving as quickly and explosively and dynamically as possible with as much intent as possible. You're going to do things like snatches. You're going to do things like cleans, like jerks, like push presses, like heavier med ball throws. We're worried about producing force, but we're also concerned with doing it as quickly as fucking possible. If you can move it, but it's really slow, you need to lower the weight and increase the rate of force development. Okay, and that's where your power is going to be developed. As we continue to move down the force velocity curve, now we're going to be focusing more on the velocity side of things. Now, we're not worried with load and force as much. We're just worried about speed and how quickly you can move from point A to point B. This is where your plyometric exercises are going to come into play. You're jumping, you're bounding. This is where your sprinting is going to come into play. This is where your lighter ballistic exercises like med ball throws or throws on a Smith machine are going to come into play. Really, really important method to be using here. And we have to train all different areas of the force velocity curve, but it is also largely dependent. Like I have some athletes that are really strong, but they're really slow. And so we're not going to use the max effort method as much. We're going to spend a little bit more time focusing on sprinting or plyometrics or jumping. I have some athletes that are really, really fast, but they don't have a lot of strength. And so maybe we're going to add a little bit of muscle and then we're going to get them strong as shit. And so this is where a good system diagnostics phase comes into play to focus on the athletic quality that's needed. And we use a lot of methods in order to improve power in the weight room. We'll use the max effort method. We'll use the dynamic effort method. This is going to train more of the power side of the force velocity curve. I love Olympic variations to do this, but I also love using accommodated resistance, things like squats or bench pressing with bands or chains for added resistance. And what's really great about using something like a resistance band, accommodating resistance to improve your powers. Let's say we're doing a box squat with bands on it. Typically, when you squat, as you're coming out of the hole, your rate of movement is going to decrease. You're going to get slower as you go higher. But if you have resistance bands attached to the bar and it's pulling the bar down, it requires you to accelerate throughout the entire movement, which means you don't lose acceleration, which means you don't lose speed, which means you can improve your force development and your velocity and speed at the same time, which allows you to maximize your power gains. So accommodating resistance is something that I use with most of our advanced level clients in order to maximize their power output. We'll also use different methods like contrast and complex training, where we'll do something heavy and then we'll go right into doing something explosive and something fast. So maybe we'll do a really heavy box squat or a really heavy back squat to stimulate the nervous system and get a high level of force production, and then go into something like a vertical jump or a bound. A lot of the research shows that when you do something heavy and produce a lot of force and stimulate the nervous system and then go right into something explosive, you get better power gains. You're more explosive, you're more dynamic. And so all of these different methods, whether it's max effort or dynamic effort, or we're using contrast training or complex training, and I'll make individual podcasts on all of these different methods. There's only so much that I can cover in one podcast. Is very, very individualized. Every single client that we work with, we put them through a good system diagnostics, a testing phase first in order to identify where their biggest weaknesses are. And then we use that testing along with their training history, along with their sport, along with their injuries, along with the equipment that they have, their schedule, to create the perfect plan to level up their alactic system and their alactic power. All right. So that's a quick, brief breakdown of how to improve your alactic system, whether it's improving your alactic power, how efficient and quickly you can use the alactic system, your alactic capacity, how long you can use your alactic system, or your neuromuscular development, your brain's ability to recruit those fast twitch muscle fibers and actually produce force and do it very, very quickly. Those are going to be the three ways that you develop your alactic system. The last thing that I want to cover is when to develop your alactic system. Your alactic system, like we said earlier, it's a system that is largely genetic. You're going to have a marginal improvement on your alactic system. It's very, very important to still train it though. The adaptation lasts shorter than any other athletic quality that you're going to work on. So let's say you spend a good 3 months building your aerobic system. That aerobic adaptation, you can stop training the aerobic system. That aerobic adaptation is going to last for another couple of months, even if you're doing other things. The same is not said for the alactic system. You could spend 2-3 months developing your alactic system, and then you stop training your alactic system for a couple weeks, for a month, and you're going to see dips in power. Okay? So the alactic system, we're always doing some kind of alactic training. Like when I program lifts for fighters, whether they're in camp or not, they always have plyometrics, ballistics, and dynamic effort exercises, whether it's squatting or benching against accommodating resistance or Olympic variations. If they're out of camp, the volume and frequency of their dynamic effort, their explosive movements are going to be smaller, but we are always doing something that requires the alactic system year round, just because if we're not using that adaptation, we will lose that adaptation. That being said, alactic system development becomes the primary focus when we're in fight camp. The reason for this is because we want max power going into the fight. So we're going to increase the volume and the frequency and the focus and the intent on the alactic system, and we're going to decrease the focus on the other qualities because we want to maximize our power output going into the fight, because we understand, cool, if I reduce my aerobic training, if I cut out my lactic training, if I'm doing lower volume in the gym, those adaptations are not going to go away. They'll still carry over into my fight, and I'm just going to fucking max out my power going into the fight, which is where you need it anyway. You're not trying to knock anybody out in sparring. You need it in the fight. The second reason that we train the alactic system in camp is because the alactic system, compared to your lactic system and your aerobic system, is just less fatiguing. Yes, it's a neuromuscular adaptation, and so your nervous system is going to be a little bit more taxed from it, but it's not a muscular skeleton adaptation where like the lactic system is working your muscles to failure. That's super fucking fatiguing. You don't want that while you're sparring twice a week, grappling really hard, trying to cut weight, right? Your calories are lower, your effort's higher. You don't need more added fatigue that could lead to injuries and impact your confidence. And so the alactic system is the perfect thing to train in camp because from an adaptation point of view, it just makes the most sense. The carryover is shorter, and so you need to train it closer to your fight so you can peak it out. And it's less fatiguing than training your other energy systems, your other athletic qualities. So if you put a lot of time and energy into training your alactic system, it's going to have the least amount of negative impact on your skill training, which when you're in camp is the most important thing anyway. Your strength and conditioning should be the lowest frequency when you're in camp compared to out of camp anyway. All right. So really important that you're training your alactic system either like, I would say, starting toward the end of pre-camp, but through most of your camp, your alactic system is going to be your primary focus. Again, we train it all year round, but it takes the show and becomes the main focus when we're in camp. All right. I think that's everything. That's a pretty complex breakdown of the alactic system. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into this. Like the name of the podcast suggests, it's Fight Science Made Simple. My goal is to make these concepts as simple for you to understand as possible. The biggest takeaways to have is that the alactic system is what's responsible for your knockout power, for your takedowns, finishing your takedowns, for passing, for explosive escapes. When you need to be explosive and dynamic, the alactic system is what causes it. It's a very genetic system, so most of your alactic work is predominantly determined at birth. Although it can be trained, it's very marginal. But in the sense of combat sports, even a little bit more power can be really, really beneficial. The 3 ways to train your alactic system: alactic power, so how quickly your body can break down ATP and regenerate it; alactic capacity, how long your body can use the alactic system for, also like the available phosphocreatine in your system; and then the neuromuscular adaptation, your brain's ability to recruit your fast twitch muscle fibers. If I would do anything to train my alactic system, it would be lift heavy and throw things and jump and move really, really fast. Like most of your alactic development is going to come in the weight room. You should be doing something alactic year round, but it's really going to become the focus and the main thing that you do when you're in fight camp. All right. So that's the rundown of the A-Lactic system, and that closes the show on our 3-episode series of energy system development. Go back and watch the aerobic system. That's episode 8. Go back and watch the lactic system. That's episode 10. We're going to keep rolling these out every single week. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go over, hit me up on Instagram. And if you want help developing these things, if you're like, dude, this information is amazing, but I don't want to spend the time or energy or figure anything this out, or I don't really know if I have the ability to do it. I'm trying to fucking fight. I'm working a job. I have a family. I'm trying to get to the top as quickly as I possibly can. Then I would love the opportunity to see how we can help. Go over to Instagram, DM me the word collective to see if we can help you out, get info on our one-on-one coaching. I love what I do. This is my life. I've been doing this shit since I was 5 years old. I went to school for this. This is all I've ever done. Been rocking with the Fight Science Collective since 2019. So I'd love the opportunity to see how we can help you reach your fight goals, take everything to the next level. But again, thanks for hanging out with me. That wraps up episode 11. We'll be back same time next week. Till next time, catch you later.